age in which we have Lady Farina, do shielders still hold any relevance? Let's talk about that today. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. First off, let's discuss all the good things that a shielder brings to the table in this current Genshin day and age. And if you want to test out a good shielder, Zhongli's on banners right now, but where can you go to for cheaper primo gems? Well, Loot Bar is here to save a day. Loot Bar is a fantastic service which can offer you cheaper Genesis crystals and stellar jades compared to the official prices shown in-game. Take a look at this comparison between the cost of crystals from Loot Bar and then from the game's top-up store. If you're new, then you can claim an amazing coupon which grants you up to 8% off. And the prices are up to 20% cheaper compared to the official channel. Loot Bar is an absolutely safe service, and has an endless amount of positive reviews. How can you use the site? Well, allow me to show you. First, input your UID. That's right, you need no login information whatsoever. Choose your desired package, and then you'll get your delicious primos delivered to you. This is all legit since the site uses a VPN, which is how they cheapen the primo gems, and official top-up methods are used. Check out Loot Bar today to save on all your gacha needs. Are there any enemies which are annoying enough to justify wanting a shielder? Yeah, actually. These annoying mechanical beasts are the first thing that come to my mind. The Copper Duo is my second least favorite boss in the game. The knockback from it is extremely irritating when trying to play a character such as Arlecchino, or when you're trying to do aim shots of someone like Linny. These two dish out a ridiculous amount of damage too. Like, holy guacamole. You get hit a couple of times by these guys, and then you're done for. Against these two, even if a shielder is far from necessary if you're a good enough player, it is an aggravating enough fight to warrant having a shielder built. Then you have these angry water guys. At first, when they're in their small form, they're not all that annoying. However, once they evolve into big guy form, then a shielder can feel pretty handy. They pack a punch and cause a whole lot of staggering. I'll be honest, I've always found iframing them to be enough, but I can definitely see a realistic situation in which you'd want to have a shielder on hand for these specific creatures. Constipated beasts are a pretty common occurrence in the Abyss too. In fact, we have a couple in there right now. Those menaces deal an obnoxious amount of damage to you, and having a shielder equipped can make dealing with them feel a whole lot more bearable. So yes, in my opinion, there are in fact places in which you would realistically want to have a shielder in the current day and age. I'm sure that there's plenty more scenarios, but those are a certain few that immediately come to mind. Then you have the more specific individual qualities. For example, if you're fighting this Geo Spider, then having Zhongli is quite the blessing due to how quickly he can suck up those types of shields, or any Geo-based boss for that matter. He's fantastic at dealing with their little gimmicks. Baiju's more of a healer than a shielder to be honest, but because his shield refreshes so quickly, it still contributes to increasing character interruption resistance. This guy in general is quite a good character, since he offers a good range of overall utilities to his team. But maybe I'm pushing it a bit by including him as a shielder, I'll leave that up for you to decide. Layla's a character that I've been pretty harsh on in the past, and to be honest, I don't think I give her enough credit, because what she does is pretty impressive for a 4-star. Sure, she only does shields, but have you seen how strong that shield is for a 4-star? It is just raw defensiveness, but if that's exactly what you're looking for, then holy heck, this sleep-deprived college student won't disappoint. Kirara's another shielder that I consider to be a decent character. Hyperbox is obviously more of a meme team, but it can still do some silly things thanks to the fact that the cat has a ridiculously high burst scaling, but Hyperbox hasn't much to do with her shield. When using her strictly as a shield bot, she does pretty good work. Sure, you want to pick up a couple of constellations in order to make her Dendro application acceptable for teams such as Aggravate. However, once you get to that stage, she's pretty solid. Being able to proc 4-piece instructors is a lovely little plus as well. Toma's a genuinely pretty good character these days thanks to how he works in Muolani teams. He can be a replacement for Xiangling in Kenichi teams too, plus he's been a good slot-in for Burgeon teams as a pyro trigger ever since that element was introduced to the game. Then you have characters like Noelle who shield themselves during combat. I wouldn't consider her to be a traditional shielder, as you typically use her on-field as a Farina healer or Geo main DPS. However, the shield is a handy bit of additional comfort which makes her gameplay feel super smooth. There are some bad shielders too, such as the likes of Diona. However, most characters of this archetype feel pretty easy to play while doing their jobs nicely. There's more solid units here than bad ones. All of these are able to provide something different to the table which they sit at, so to say that shielders are completely redundant now would literally just be wrong, not to mention that general comfort and ease of use can make a character more appealing to use. There's also plenty of relevant characters that enjoy shielders, such as Muolani liking both Toma and Zhongli in certain team combinations. How about the cons of shielders in the current meta? Well, the obvious is that you lose out on damage. You miss out on the chance to use a buffer in place of where you put a shielder. This isn't always the case in fairness, as you have units such as Toma with more practical applications regarding his shield. However, most of the time, even when using certain sets or possessing certain abilities to try compensate for less buffing, shielders will generally make your teams do less damage. You're trading in peak potential to yield out maximum comfort, it's in the fine print. We have a lot of self-sustaining characters these days too. Neuvillette can definitely utilize a shielder well in some cases, but most of the time he'll be okay on his own because of how ranged he is. And Vlad can heal himself back up on his own. But Juice, comparing anybody to Neuvillette is kinda unproductive in general. Alright, then have a look at Coriander. She also self-sustains. Arlecchino's burst is able to heal her up too, and while in an ideal world you could totally avoid using it, that's still an available avenue to take if you find yourself struggling with HP maintenance. Not to mention the insane rise of healers that's happened over the past year or so. It's not even all due to our beloved Lady Farina. Yes, she is indeed the main propagator of such a trend, yet even so, the kits of characters who are capable of healing have gotten so much better. Compare Barbara and Chi-Chi, who released in 1.0, to Chevreuse and Xianyun, who released far later on into the game's life cycle. The old character's only functionality is healing, nothing else, diminishing their value these days. Meanwhile, characters such as Xianyun and Chevreuse have other valuable reasons as to why you would want to use them. For example, beefing up an overload team, or buffing up a plunge DPS team. So most of the time you're gonna have somebody who can heal in your team already due to the other things that they provide. However, it's worth noting that damage mitigation offers a different gameplay experience as opposed to recovering from damage already taken. Simply being staggered is enough to throw off a whole lot of units. Shoot, Shieldon's a super recent example of my point. An insanely strong, high potential character that is often used for her buffing first and foremost, with her healing being second. I honestly usually consider her that way whenever I'm team building, because that's just how insane her buffing quality is. So when we have characters that can literally give us the best of both worlds now while being far more in tune with a current meta featuring far more creative, useful kits, why would anybody ever want to go back to using shielders? I think that ultimately to say that shielders aren't relevant anymore is a bit too broad of an umbrella statement, because to me I see it as something that just depends from player to player. People know that shielders equals less team damage, but sometimes dealing the highest amount of DPS possible isn't gonna be for everyone. Clearing equals all of a Spiral Abyss rewards, and there are plenty out there who would like to clear with minimal hassle or stress involved. I can't really fault that. I suppose the best way to put it is that a shielder is rarely ever best in slot on a character's team. Unless that specific unit feels downright horrendous to play shieldless, there is a minimal chance that you need to play a shielder with them. However, different circumstances are a thing. Not everybody cares about being the absolute best at this game, and some people might find that shielders help them play better on the respective platform that they're on. From a number standpoint, they will always be objectively quote-unquote less useful characters, but there's more to gameplay than just how much damage you can do. So to me, yes, shielders are still relevant, namely because you just can't declare an entire archetype of unit as dead, because that's way too vague, but also because there are some realistic situations in which a shielder would feel very handy. I'd say that it makes more sense to look at individual shielders and what they provide to discern whether they themselves are good or not. For example, Diona and Toma both fall under the shielder umbrella, but I think most of you would agree when I say that Toma is a better unit, right? So technically speaking, sure, they're less relevant these days, but to call them completely obsolete would just be wrong. It all boils down to preference at the end of the day. I always find it interesting to ask what people's opinions are on somebody like Zhongli, because you're gonna get a different answer from everyone. I've found shielders to be pretty good training wheels whenever I'd first started out playing the game on my iPad, for instance, until later finding them to be somewhat useless to me as I began to prioritize dealing high amounts of damage. What's your personal experience of shielders? Are they still useful to you? Let me know about your experiences with them down below. Also, quick notice for the uninformed, I've made a second channel which will revolve around only silly ZZZ content. Go check it out and drop a sub if you're potentially interested. Hopefully this video was able to ask you the question of whether shielders are still relevant or not. This has been Juice, signing out, and allow me to leave you with a riddle. I am red with some yellow, and I'm a defensive individual. 3, 2, 1. That's right, you guessed it. Shuckle!